Welcome to the Fertility Podcast. I'm Natalie Silverman, your host. I've been using my voice in my work for about 15 years now. I used to be on the radio. Now I'm podcasting and do a lot of voiceover work. Now, the Fertility Podcast has a whole host of episodes for you, from adenomyosis to zero sperm. It's total A to Z of all sorts of things that affect you on your fertility journey. I'm mum to a little boy called Phoenix after having successful ICSI treatment, and that was my reason for starting the podcast. And I hope that if you found us, then you'll realise that you are not alone. This podcast is to help educate and empower you. I brought together as many experts and tried to share as many of your stories as possible. And I now have my wonderful co-host.
I'm Kate Davis, a fertility nurse consultant, and I'm adamant that we can all do so much better at understanding our fertility. I'm really passionate about teaching you to take ownership of your fertility, teaching you practical steps, emotional coping strategies, and lifestyle changes that you can make to hopefully optimise your chances of conceiving.
Now you know who we are. All you need to do is enjoy the show. Right, this is a little extra episode. It's not a tea break pod. It's not a normal podcast episode. Well, it might be a normal podcast episode, but it's a short podcast episode because this is a call to action. We need your help, okay? Basically, you will know if you've listened to the Fertility Podcast before that we put a great emphasis on the male voice. If you are dealing with male factor infertility, if your partner has just been diagnosed with it, or maybe even if it's unexplained and you want your other half, or you're a man listening, you want to understand more about your fertility, please do have a look at the fertilitypodcast.com website. There's a little search box where you can type in male factor or male infertility, and you can hear previous chats that I've had, and Kate and I have also had, with urologists, with other male fertility experts, and also men sharing their stories, because that's part of what this podcast is all about. It's being the resource that you need, whoever you are. And something that I've spoken about before and I've shared on my social platforms is a piece of research that is taking place in London. It's Imperial College at Hammersmith that are doing the research, and they need more men. And Kate and I are going to have a chat with Tharu, who's behind this research. Now, I've already been recommending it to people, and I've had some people that listen to the podcast go, you have as well, haven't you, Kate?
Yeah, or I've had patients come to me that have been seen by Tharu, which is great. So it's good to hear that the word is getting out there.
Well, you're going to hear from him now. He needs a specific number of men, especially he wants some dads who have conceived naturally. So if you're listening and maybe you've got a mate who'd be up for it, Tharu will explain what they need to do. They'll also get some money in their pocket for their time. They will need to go to London, but have a listen. If you can help, please do help us spread the word. So we're now going to welcome Dr Tharakan to the podcast. Tharu is based at Imperial College and he is currently investigating novel markers in male infertility. Tharu and I have spoken a couple of times in kind of real life, and he's been trying to get more men as part of his research. And what we want to do is just find out where he's at and hopefully see if we can help. How are you doing, Tharu?
Hi, I'm good. First, I'd like to thank you guys because you've been a great help in recruiting patients. I'm currently based at Hammersmith Hospital and I'm looking to recruit about 150 men with different types of male infertility. We are progressing. We have completed what I would call the male factor cohort of the study, and these are men who've got abnormal semen parameters. But we're really desperately trying to recruit patients who have normal semen parameters but still cannot conceive. These are generally called unexplained infertile patients.
Yeah.
And actually, they're the crux of this study, because I think if we understand why they can't conceive, it would open up a lot of our understanding about why men in general can't conceive, even with abnormal semen parameters. The other cohort of men we're desperate to recruit is fertile patients. So these are dads who've had kids, because we need a comparison of, I guess, what you would call normal. So we'd have that as a sort of baseline to compare all the other groups with. At present, we've recruited about 100 men altogether, and 40 men who've had kids and about 20 men who have not had kids but have normal semen parameters. So the unexplained group.
All right, 60 men. Surely we can do that.
Oh, I reckon we can do 60 men for you, Tharu, no problem. Can I just ask, if there's men listening now and they're quite interested in getting involved, what does it mean for them with regards to time commitment? How do they, do they have to come to you? Just thinking about answering some of those logistic issues.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. All I ask for my participants is one study visit, and it's usually about an hour, but in most cases less. The biggest issue is travelling to Hammersmith Hospital in East Acton, but it is one visit, and I would say normally between 30 to 60 minutes. As part of that visit, I'll ask them to fill out a questionnaire, which can be done earlier because I tend to send them this via email. I'll do some blood tests on them, and the main sticking point is the time taken to produce a sperm sample, because that's one of the main tests involved in the study. But usually I would say that takes maximum 20 to 30 minutes.
And assuming that if a man's going to give a sample, he needs to have abstained for, is it 2 days before?
Yeah, 2 days is the recommendation.
So a little bit of planning in what's going on with you. Best not to time it around when your partner's ovulating if you're trying to conceive, because you're going to cause all sorts of problems. And with this cohort, are you still doing the sperm DNA the sperm DNA test, or was that the one with male factor that you've already done?
No, we're doing it on all of them.
Okay.
So we can sort of see what the trend is between different groups. As well as that, we're also looking at something called a reactive oxygen species, and we're doing that on all men who come into this study. And what's unique about this study is we're also looking at something called the microbiome. Now, this isn't a test you can get done either on the NHS or privately. And it's essentially what we feel might be the reason why men struggle to conceive. We think the bacterial makeup of men's sperm might be a contributing factor. Once the study's finished, we'll be able to potentially look at this in more detail. It may be one of the main reasons why men are struggling. And also, if we have enough evidence to show this may be a reason, it may be a target for future therapies. So it's all very cutting edge research we're doing here. And one thing I do offer as part of this study, I've got a sort of urological background and I'm quite interested in male fertility. So every man who comes through the study, I do tend to look at potential ways I could optimize their fertility through diet and other sort of lifestyle factors.
So it's almost like a free fertility MOT for blokes that you're giving.
Precisely.
Because I know some people that have been to see you and have found it really useful.
Yeah, one of my patients has.
Yeah.
And for those men who obviously have had kids, and for them, as an incentive to join the study, we're offering £75 for any dads who are willing to offer time, because obviously they'll have no other incentive.
Yeah,
I was going to say that must. That was my question to you. Was that must be quite a hard group to recruit, because, like you say, there's no incentive, but you're offering them some financial remuneration for their time.
So it has been the most difficult group to recruit, and I am asking all my participants if they know any friends, family, colleagues, anyone who'd be interested. It'd be extremely helpful. And the issue is, obviously, they're crucial to the study because we don't really have a comparison of what we should be expecting. So we need this group as a baseline, really, in order to assess.
So we need 40 dads who haven't had treatment. They can't have had fertility treatment. Is that right?
Yeah, so they would have had to conceive naturally. Yeah. Other than that...
Is there an age cut-off?
I suggested 45 is the age cut-off, and that's predominantly because a lot of these tests, regardless of whether you're infertile or not, as you get older, it can affect the results. So 45 is the ideal. Well, 45 and less is the ideal, because we'll know it's because of their fertility rather than their age. So that's why we've put that cutoff, really, just because we want to be 100% sure if there is something abnormal in some of these tests, it's because their fertility rather than any sort of age-related changes.
Okay.
You mentioned that reactive oxygen species testing and sperm DNA fragmentation is quite controversial, which is, I guess, why you're looking at the seminal microbiome as being the answer. why do you feel that those two tests are controversial? What tells you that?
I wouldn't say they're controversial per se. I know they don't offer on the NHS because they feel it's lacking in some evidence. However, my issue with these tests is it gives you a sort of molecular idea that something's wrong, but it doesn't really explain why it's wrong. So the good thing about microbiome is it could offer an explanation, and actually, once we have an explanation, that can help us drive a treatment. Yeah. Whereas reactive oxygen species and DNA fragmentation, I think certainly they have a place in certain aspects, but they are lacking in a lot of extra information which we would want to know, which potentially the microbiome can provide. I think everyone's goal would be to see someone and tell them why they're infertile.
And importantly, treat it.
Treatment, precisely. Whereas sperm DNA fragmentation, it sort of gives you an indication of that a reason why you may be infertile. It doesn't really give you the cause. So that's why I'm getting very excited about microbiome, because I think actually, if we have a potential cause, that can drive treatment in the future. But unfortunately, like most things with male infertility, there's just such a shortage of evidence. That's why trials like this are really crucial, I feel.
And have you got a cut-off point that you need these men by? We're speaking we're speaking at the end of February, and we'll probably share this in a couple of weeks.
So my hope is that I can get the whole study done by the end of April, and if that's the case, that'll give me a few months to analyse data, and hopefully, if we can get some good results and evidence from then on, it can lead to other studies. I'm currently doing a PhD, so I do. Time is sort of a limitation, but hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get everyone in by the right time, and we'll get all the results done within that time frame. It's just like most research, it can be extremely frustrating, but
all right.
That's what it is.
Well, look, we're putting out the force, and we are going to do our damnedest to see if we can get those 40 men at least. Hopefully then we can get to hear about the outcomes of the research.
I can't thank you guys enough, because actually a vast proportion of my patients actually have come to your podcast. So thank you so much for all the help you've done so far.
No problem. That's what it's for. And we want to always have that voice for men and male factor, because as we know, it's not studied enough. It's not spoken about enough. There's still so much stigma and shame about it as a conversational point. So, and hopefully those 40 dads, they're going to learn a little bit more about the issues, and they may then be able to help spread the word and be more empathetic to maybe some of their mates who are less willing to talk about it, because I think the more awareness we can have with men who haven't struggled to conceive for their fellow men who are struggling to conceive.
And their sons, those 40 dads will have sons or daughters, but both is obviously applicable, so therefore finding out this information for the future is in their best interest for having grandchildren in the future, isn't it? So
Precisely.
All right, Tharu, we'll get on with it and we'll keep you posted.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a nice day.
Right, so you heard it from Tharu there. We're going to put the details in the show notes. If you know of a dad who's had kids and he likes to do good, he'd like to help men who are struggling to conceive, then let him know that he can get 75 quid in his pocket for basically giving a semen sample and having a good chat with a guy who could help him learn a bit more that maybe he could tell his mates.
Yeah, absolutely. Pass that information on, because this is all important, isn't it? It's getting us all talking more about male factor infertility. And even if a man without any issues who has got children could actually sit there and have those conversations, maybe with his workmates or whomever, then we're helping somebody else for the future.
Yeah. Spread the word, and be sure to let us know what you think of this podcast. You can subscribe via your favourite podcast app. You can follow me at Fertility Poddy.
And me at Your Fertility Journey.
Thanks for your support as always. Until the next time.